God, it feels so weird being in YouTube again. But that is not the point of today's radio broadcast. Uh hello, welcome to the first ever YouTube exclusive radio broadcast that I'm doing. One of many very soon. And today we're just going over the lore and behind the scenes of my second album, My Infinite Azure. Now, I do want to point out that um, this radio stream won't be tackling things like we won't be tackling on things just like what presets I use, uh what what serum banks or whatever. We will solely be focusing on on what happened during the events behind each track, what they mean to me, or rather, at the very least, or at the very least, what went on during the production of said track, what my thought process was behind all of it, and I will also be explaining the lore that I've built up for the album, which will be connected to something bigger in the future. So I hope you guys do wait for it. With that being said, I guess we can start off with this radio stream. Also, I would also like to point out that I won't be reading chat during the entirety of this album. So I hope you guys understand if I don't reply to everyone in chat right now. There will also be a transcript written very soon during or after a few months because I will be busy for the time being, as well as I will be uploading every single track from My Infinite Azure here on YouTube exclusively very soon. So I hope you guys do enjoy listening to every single one of the tracks. That said, let's begin with the first track in the album, Within This Finite World, That's My Promise. This track is a very emotional one, to say the least. Um, when I was writing the track, or when I was during production stage of this track, my Within This Finite World Lies My Promise was originally supposed to be a submission for the Archaea Music Contest, which was announced last year. Unfortunately, midway during the production of this track, I broke up with my ex, which led to me stopping music production all in all for a solid 3 months. Well, not 3 months, but rather 3 weeks. This was also during the time when I was still recovering from a ransomware attack, so everything was very much fresh off the bat in terms of music production. In terms of the thought process for this track, Within This Finite World Lies My Promise was like I said, was originally an Archaea submission, but in the end, I felt like venting out the emotions I had that was building up or that was happening around me when I broke up with my ex. And that's when I decided to make a melody that I was comfortable with and that expressed the emotions I felt here. It was also a melody that is telling me to just keep moving regardless of what happens. And that's why in the climax of the song you will hear a very very redemption-like melody here. This song was very special because I wanted to try something new as well. Because in my life, or in my time making the album, I never really tried making liquid drum and bass. A lot of the influence here actually came from old school drum and bass tracks from back in the 2000s, actually. So that's really interesting, as well as like I was listening to Amelia's track Fly With Me while I was making this. Within This Finite World Lies My Promise to this day holds a special place to me, and it is one that I will never cease to just keep listening to. It's a song that told me, regardless of what you're going through in your relationship or anything, things will get better and everything will come into plan eventually. This song was my way to vent, and honestly speaking, it was this track, well, it expresses my emotions in general. Moving on to the next track, Yokaicore, Azure of Ice. Yokaicore was the first track I made in the album after getting hit with a ransomware attack back in November of 2022. At that point, I was just purely devastated because I lost everything. I lost all of the project files, all of my VSTs, all of my sample packs that I collected over the span of 2 years. And I was really stumped with what I wanted to, or what genre I really wanted to make. It wasn't until I started listening to freeform hardcore again where I got the idea of producing Yokaicore. Yokaicore was basically a comeback type of music, or comeback type of track that I decided to produce. A lot of inspirations went into listening to this track, such as Darren's track Peak 1.2, as well as Lapix and Betwixt In Between. This track was basically me saying fuck you to the ransomware that took everything from me, and I was coming back stronger than ever, regardless of what happens, regardless of what challenges are gonna head my way. This track and the thought process behind it was basically, I'm not gonna let anything stop me. This track is a track of redemption, and not just redemption, but rebuilding, revival. As for the title, I had this ice idea, or like this snowy idea of a theme, I suppose, which explains the pianos and the very winter-esque chord progressions. And to be honest, I think out of all the tracks in the album, Within This Finite World, no, not Within This Finite World, Yokaicore, Azure of Ice, is one of the tracks that I can definitely call one of my magnum opuses. This track is a very fun one to produce, and when I finally finished it, I was absolutely happy with the result of everything that came into fruition. So yeah, that's the behind the scenes of Yokaicore, Azure of Ice. Moving on to the next one, Constellations. Now, Constellations was a pretty interesting case, to say the least. Interesting in the sense that this song was a result of me being stuck in limbo. And by limbo, I mean being stuck in producer or writer's block. Being in producer block, or rather writer's block, during the production of Constellations was hard, because I wasn't able to write any melody. I wasn't able to like do anything for the time being. Like I said, I was stuck in limbo. And to be completely honest, Constellation is a breath of fresh air when I first made this, because I get to do something different for once. Because throughout the entire time I was producing the album up to Constellation's point, I was making absolutely nothing else but hard dance music, such as hardcore, Frenchcore, uptempo, and it was really getting tiring. Hence the writer's block, which is why I decided to make something different. I wanted to try a different style of melody. I also wanted to try a different genre. A genre that I thought that people would like, and seeing as how Constellations was really well received by a lot of you, I think that this won't be the last trance song that I'll be making in the future. There will be more trance songs like this, but if there's anything I can really admit while making Constellations and its thought process, was this was probably the first time I've ever produced trance in general, because I never really produced trance up until this point. I guess I can say Vital Sign from Xenix version 0, which was my debut album, my first time making trance. But this time for Constellations, I thought to myself, I don't want to do the same thing again with Vital Sign. I want this to be its own thing. I want it to have its own identity. So I watched a lot of trance tutorials, as well as listened to a lot of trance mixes, and eventually the idea struck when I had a repeated melody play in my head, and I thought to myself, let me turn this melody into something beautiful. And when I started writing the chords and the melody for Constellations, everything just lined up perfectly during the production of this. Constellations was a breath of fresh air that I really needed from producing hard dance music for almost 2 to 3 years now in my time of making music as Tsukima Altera. It's a breath of fresh air that I just really needed, a break from what people expected of me as much. This song taught me how to be brave. This song taught me that it's okay if you're not doing the genre that people know you for. It's okay to break free of that comfort zone that you're at. Experiment, and you'll be free. And I think the melody and everything of Constellations reflects that, and I think it's beautiful. Oh, this song. Well, up next in this broadcast is, I think Beyond This Point is where life gets interesting, if you know what I mean. I don't know. From Shu Compilation 5. Now, this song was, or still is, a part of Shu Compilation 5 by Break Tracks, which if you haven't already listened to or have gotten the album, I suggest you guys do get the album. It is such a banger. There are a lot of really talented artists involved within the making of Shu Compilation 5, which includes me, Altermis, Ill, as well as Kurokote, for that matter. This song was another breath of fresh air because I broke free from my comfort zone here. I decided to make a song that was like a midnight joyride, rather. That's why I used a lot of like synthwave aesthetics within the like sound design of each of this track. I wanted this to be a fun song to listen to when you're like driving somewhere or like taking a joyride. It is an interesting track, really. Mostly because of like how everything is structured. From the music box alone all the way to this part with the house or speed house bass. This was completely new to me because this was the first time I'd ever made the genre of footwork, which was the entire main genre of the album. It's interesting, really, trying out a new genre like this, and seeing as how it worked out is really nice. Everything from the sound design, the music box, even like the mid part of this song, everything just lined up really well during production. Although I do have to admit I had a lot of problems while going through this. For one, I was in a really bad mental state while producing this track. I was absolutely tired of school and everything just didn't feel right and even when I was like making the early drafts of the song, it was absolutely painful. I didn't like everything that I made up until I made this part as the draft and finalized on it, because this part of the song was I guess the end of the joyride here, I should say. It is an interesting thing to listen to. From the vocal chops as well as the way I sidechained everything, it felt so redeeming in a sense that it's really nice, I guess. Everything that I'm saying right now sounds really repetitive, but it's just the thought process of what happened. The lead melody here as well, or like the lead solo here, was also the first time I'd try something more melodic in a sense. Because when I was still making this, I still had the thought of what if I took a midnight joyride out in a neon city. And that's where the melody and the aesthetics came to mind. That's why it sounds a lot more euphoric and melodic than normal. I was also listening to a lot of Psyche at the time, so you can definitely hear the inspiration from Psyche's JNF here. And other than that, I think this was a really good song that I made. Not my magnum opus, but definitely one of my favorites. Track number 4. Oh no, track number 5, Keep Moving On. Now, this song is one of my magnum opuses in my Infinite Azure. Because this song was basically my return to making UK hardcore. It had been exactly a year since I last made any UK hardcore things. My last one being Bliss and Happiness from my first album. And before I even get into the thought process of how I made this, I first would like to say thank you to Altermus for providing like vocals here, or like providing me with a UK hardcore vocal pack here. You are an absolute fucking Chad for doing that, Altermus, and I really can't thank you enough for this. Now, as for the thought process, as I was like going through like the vocal samples, the one used in Keep Moving On was absolutely astonishing. It was basically God, how should I say this? I guess it stood out the most to me because around this time I was finally moving on from a broken relationship, which was my ex, and I really wanted it. I really wanted to show that how much, ever since I started making music again, I wanted to reflect my improvement with my works. That's why I did a lot of different genres here that I felt like was really fun to do. Everything from the melody up until the drops here are really fun to start producing, and it is one that I absolutely had the most fun. This was one of the rare cases where I was like listening to my own music, and man, I was actually fist bumping the air. I was enjoying how this felt. It is something absolutely different. And when I uploaded it to YouTube, I regretted absolutely nothing, because this was another breath of fresh air. It is an amazing track, and I have to admit, it's really good. This one is one of my personal favorites in the album. And when I uploaded this on YouTube, I didn't put it in the description, but here I want to share something special about this track. Keep Moving, or something that made this track really special to me. Keep Moving On is not just my sign that says I've healed and I'm ready to move on from the wounds of a previous relationship, but it was also my sign that's saying I'm ready to move on to a new chapter of my life, because at this time, or at the time of making Keep Moving On, I was already graduating, or I was graduating from junior high school in that few weeks. And that meant that it'll be the last time I'll see my friends on a daily basis, and I will miss them. I started missing the goofiness that we had, even though graduation hadn't even started yet. It was this force, or this thought, that pushed me into creating Keep Moving On, because it told me that it's okay to move on from everything. You will learn and improve as a person, and it's something that really resonates with me. Oh, Divergence. Track number 6, Divergence, from my Infinite Azure, which is the second solo album. This song, I kind of resent this. This was the first ever song I actually made for my Infinite Azure, and to be honest, oh my god, I hate the intro so much, because right now, during the thought process of this, I was like, I want to make a rhythm game album. I want to make an album with songs that sound like they're meant for rhythm games. And while I did accomplish in this goal, I think Divergence was just like too much for me. It sounded so, like, at the time I was like, holy shit, this is so good. But over time, when I listen to this, it's just like, nah, this is not it. But I do have to admit, a lot of the songs in this album are really good. This one included, although personally it's not one of my favorites. To some, it sounded so good, but for me, it just generally sounded like, I'd say, a little bit generic in a sense. But then again, during production of this, the thought process I had with this was like, I want to make an album where if people buy it, they can use it in the rhythm games for free. I soon later figured out that that won't be the case ever. It is weird, to say the least, how I even got to that point in making the track. It's silly, but I do have to admit, some parts in this song did feel repetitive, and even during production, I still thought it sounded really repetitive in some parts, which is why I tried to change a few things. I don't think there's anything else I could say about Divergence other than the fact that it sounds like what you would normally hear from a rhythm game. It is the first track in the album, which was originally named Diverse Intentions, but in the end, when I finalized on my Infinite Azure or my Infinite Azure, I think Divergence stood out a bit when I was finally collecting every single track that I'd made here. This one stood out to be more of a freedom, no, not freedom, freeform hardcore type of music. And some parts here, now listening back to it, it sounded really good. I still resented this song for a while, but now that I listened to it and I understood the thought process of my own works more, it all just pieced in together, which was why this song sounded good now. Although I do have to admit, this is a very lengthy song. I think this is the second longest song in the entire album, excluding the remixes from Ultimus, but other than that, this is by far one of the longest songs in the entire album. It gets repetitive at first, but everything just lines up perfectly. It is okay, to say the least. But yeah, that's all I could say for Divergence. It is a rhythm game song, and it sounds okay. Thought process-wise, pretty stupid. Ifrit as Psychedelic Junkie. This song honestly really slaps, to be honest. One of the thought processes that I had here was actually based on a comment by one of my VTuber friends, Nala the Siren, or Nala the Fish. So before Ifrit even became a thing, I wanted to play around more with Psytrance, and when I uploaded The Witch's Curse Memento Mori back in December 2021, Nala was amazed with the track and wanted a Egyptian Psytrance music. So I was like, this should be interesting. I forgot about that thought for a long time until I started making Ifrit, because I wanted to experiment with a lot more Arabic or Middle Eastern melodies, if that makes sense. The flow of the song as well was really interesting as well, because this was more of a progressive Psytrance song in general. And I think how I built everything reflected it, from the 808s, the build-ups, the instruments used. It all build it up together for the climax of the song, and I think it reflected that. This was one of the songs where I really did pour all of my heart and soul out. And honestly, if I were to choose one of the tracks that I've made in the album in terms of Psytrance, I think Ifrit would be one of my favorites. The energy in this track was absolutely insane. Like, man, it was also a long time, or it had been a long time since I last made any Psytrance during this time. So getting to do a much more energetic Psytrance song is really fun. It was, at the very least, unique as its own track, because this song's energy is absolutely unmatched compared to the other songs that I've made, or other Psytrance songs that I've made. Hell, because of Ifrit, I was even able to make a sequel to this, which is also in the album. And I'll be talking about that one very soon, but back to Ifrit. The thought process of making Ifrit only stemmed from a VTuber friend's suggestion of like, hey, what if you did Egyptian or Middle Eastern EDM? And I was like, yo, that actually sounds really cool. So I did try it later on when I remembered it, when I sort of forgot it, and then when I wanted to fuck around with like Egyptian melodies or Middle Eastern melodies, I came up with Ifrit. So yeah, Ifrit is definitely one of my favorites in this entire album. And honestly, it's one of those tracks that really gets you moving up your feet for me. The energy, all of the sound effects, and the atmosphere of the song itself is absolutely amazing. And I don't think I would ever make a really good Psytrance track like Ifrit ever again, even if I tried so hard to challenge Ifrit. It is an amazing track, and there weren't any events going on during this production process, so I'm not entirely sure about that. Kurokumo, the world finale. Track number 8 in the entire album, and definitely one of my favorite trance tracks to date. This one stemmed a lot differently from my gothic hardcore or gothic Shrans tracks, or my gothic Shrans series, which either had one specific theme on it or was named after a German word that was reflective of the track. This time around, I used kanji that translated to black clouds during production because I wanted to make a Shran song that felt different. This song also went through so many revisions as well because I wasn't satisfied with a lot of the earlier versions of this track. And when I made this melody, I was like, yo, this is cool. Around this time as well, I was listening to a lot of Black Y, specifically Black or White. And I think everyone in chat, or everyone listening to the album, at some point has pointed out that, yo, this sounds like a Black Y track. Yo, that's sick. And I have to admit, it really does sound like one Black Y track. Especially Genocider, which was the main inspiration behind Kurokumo, the world finale. I also played around with a lot of interesting melodies and sound designs here, from like the distorted kicks as well as like adding an acid bass in my Shrines tracks for once. Incredible. But other than that, there's not much I could really say other than it being so different from my other Shrans series tracks. This was the first one that I had so much fun producing, and to be honest, it feels like it could fit a rhythm game if I tried hard enough. But other than that, Kurokumo is really good, to say the least. There's not much I could comment on it other than the fact that it sounds like a Black Y track. And I don't know. Oh, wait. Unfortunately, I might have to cut today's radio stream here for a bit. This is going to be a two-part I guess this will be a two-part radio series, I suppose. There will be more very soon, so I hope you guys could forgive me for having to end this radio stream so suddenly. Thank you all so much, and yeah, I guess I'll see you on the flip side. Again, transcripts will be made in the future, as well as I will be uploading the songs of my Infinite Azure over here to YouTube. If you guys would like to see more radio streams of my Infinite Azure, please, I would love to hear your guys' suggestions. And not just that, I would also love to see you guys listen to the album as well. This album took a lot of time and effort for me. It took almost a year to produce, really. But I hope you guys enjoy the album. It is also available right now on Bandcamp for only $10. It's in the pinned comments. If you guys would like to support my works as well as help me out as an artist, you may check out the Bandcamp link in the pinned chat or live chat, as well as the pinned comment in this video very soon. Rather, this live stream's archive very soon. I will continue this radio broadcast next week, and again, I hope you guys could forgive me for ending it so suddenly. But other than that, thank you. Goodbye.